What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another episode of the Forgotten Race Review. The requests are still on hold for the next couple weeks as we have two races, one reprint and one brand new race, to discuss today. From Planar Adventures, the last hardcover book Paizo's putting out for Pathfinder 1st edition today, it's all about the Aphorite. Of course, if you still have requests, throw them in the comments and we will get to them. And as always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, helps out a lot. Before we get underway, this episode of the Forgotten Race Review was brought to you in part by Kendall Carson. Kendall, thanks so much for your help, my friend. Now, let's dive in. So the Aphorite is a race entirely native to Paizo's setting. We can pull other examples from real-world fantasy or mythology to make some similarities. However, I see a different bit of a thing here that normally doesn't happen on the Forgotten Race Review. When I look at the word Aphorite, I see the word aphorism. An aphorism is defined as a pithy observation that contains a general truth, such as, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Ite at the end might denote the resident of a place, such as an Israelite. Therefore, our Aphorites can be interpreted from their name alone as residents of a general truth. And that's pretty accurate because these guys come from the perfect city of Axis. That's right, if you're lawful neutral when you die, this is where you go. And, you know, we'll probably talk about the Outer Planes at some point on our Friday series. When we get done with the Dragon Empires, we're going to hit all the planets in the solar system. I think the Outer Planes come next. Yeah, seems good. The primary inhabitants, of course, of Axis are the Axiomites. Axiom, of course, a synonym for aphorism, so maybe I'm onto something there. And truthfully, when Planar Adventures dropped, I was really hoping to see the Axiomite created as a PC race, but you get what you get. In any case, the Axiomites are outsiders born of lawful neutral souls whose primary focus is to serve Axis in one of three ways: the construction and tending of inevitables, think robot angels, the expansion and maintenance of the city itself, and exploring and calculating the law and constants that underpin all reality in hopes of using this knowledge to bring order to the great beyond. However, the Axiomites are ill-suited to interactions with mortals. As creatures of pure order, they find it difficult to deal with creatures who have the free will to choose their own destinies and to interpret or even willfully ignore the law. Ancient Axiomites long pondered a solution to problematic encounters with visitors from the material plane, and the answer that they arrived at was the creation of a new form of life, a melding of their own perfection with the unpredictable and fragile bodies and minds of mortal humanoids. And thus the first Aphorites came to be. Although, of course, they are always welcome in Axis, the city is not their true home. Aphorites are infused with a spark of mortality and the influence of the material plane. As such, these guys were created to serve as diplomats, translators, and envoys between the Axiomites and the myriad creatures of the countless material plane worlds. As native outsiders, Aphorites do of course have free will of their own, and they live and die just as other mortals do. They're akin in many ways to other native outsiders. Think Aasimars and Tieflings, and hey, you know, way back in the day we covered Aasimars. If you want to get caught up, follow this card right up here. But the Aphorites differ in that they are not the result of unions between outsiders and mortals. While the original population was forged in Axis by the Axiomites, new Aphorites are born to Aphorite parents. In cases where an Aphorite and a humanoid have a child, the offspring is either a newborn Aphorite or a member of the humanoid parent's race. Aphorites were originally, as one can imagine, created with a uniform appearance, but they have diversified as a result of generations spent on the material plane. Today, an Aphorite always appears humanoid in form with golden skin that flickers and periodically coruscates with sparkling crystalline dust, and eyes and hair that tend towards metallic hues. Beyond this, they can appear similar to dwarves, elves, humans, any other medium humanoid race, and exceptions do occur with increasing frequency for Aphorites to be born of other sizes. Aphorites are smart and strong, and they're as likely to become the focus of attention and admiration as they are victims for that very reason. Their ordered and structured personalities often cause strained relations with more capricious or mischievous neighbors, and they can be a source of conflict with cultures who highly value individual expression. Races with stronger tendencies towards the law typically build stronger bonds with Aphorites. Dwarves, in particular, enjoy the company of Aphorites and find the birth of an Aphorite amongst their own a welcome event. While not every Aphorite is inherently lawful, most relish structure and order in their lives. Ideas of morality, however, are less clear-cut to the Aphorites. While most can appreciate scholarly studies of the philosophy of good and evil and recognize the difference between them, this divide doesn't influence them to the same extent that the structure of law versus the disorganized madness of chaos does. Consequently, as one again might imagine, most Aphorites are lawful neutral. Typically, Aphorites who are drawn to theology choose lawful gods as patrons, with Abadar in particular resonating with their inherent desires and goals because, they're from the place where Abadar is from. Chaotic Aphorites exist, but they tend to be loners and have little interest in the tradition of their own kind. In any case, most Aphorites eventually experience a longing to see the world beyond the boundaries of their birthplace. Be it by choice or by chance, Aphorites seem predisposed to the life of an adventurer, always seeking to better understand not only the world but themselves as well. Aphorites excel when they are placed in situations where their intellects might shine. Aphorite names typically reflect the society they are raised in, so an Aphorite raised among humans would have a name befitting a human child, an Aphorite raised among dwarves would have a dwarven name, etc., etc. As far as our basic stats go, again, we're assuming our height and weight around the height and weight of the parent race that the Aphorite comes from. It's probably also a fair assessment to say that that Aphorite will come of age around the same time as the human, the dwarf, the elf, the halfling, wherever from which it sprang, but since they're native outsiders again, I'm gonna go ahead and say that most likely, an Aphorite lives about as long as an Aasimar, with the maximum age being 250 plus 6 percentage dice worth of years. Now, down to the character sheet. An Aphorite receives a +2 to its strength and intelligence, but a -2 to its dexterity. Hey guys, I found the Magus. Aphorites are strong and intelligent, but they move and react somewhat stiffly. They're medium native outsiders with a base speed of 30 feet, and they've got dark vision out to 60 feet. In addition, an Aphorite gains a +2 racial bonus on checks with a single craft skill of their choice. Okay, never mind guys. What I actually have found was the melee alchemist, because there's a +2 to that craft alchemy, which is actually a relevant craft skill, whereas that craft structures might get used once in the course of your campaign. I digress. Aphorites can use protection from chaos once per day as a spell-like ability, with a caster level equal to the Aphorite's class level. In addition, they have electricity resistance 5, and a +2 bonus on saves versus poison and mind-affecting effects. Aphorites also have a special ability known as Crystalline Dust. An Aphorite can manifest a haze of crystalline dust that forms into indistinct runes and glyphs surrounding its body. This effect grants the Aphorite a 20% mischance against melee and ranged attacks. Activating this dust is a move action, but it can be maintained each round as a free action. The effect cannot be disrupted, but it ends immediately if the Aphorite is killed, paralyzed, stunned, knocked unconscious, or otherwise prevented from taking a free action to maintain it each round. An Aphorite can use this ability a number of rounds per day equal to its hit dice, but of course these rounds do not need to be consecutive. Okay, so right off the bat, we see a race that has a neg to its dexterity, which in Pathfinder 1st edition is just so rare. I personally can't count the number of times I've looked at a new race and seen a +2 to dexterity and charisma, but a -2 to something, probably strength, and that's okay because those are good stats to have bonuses to, and strength is the stat that I don't mind having a neg on most of the time. But I know there's builds out there, especially like the 15-point by Paladin, that would not really ever care about its dexterity. You're gonna have that heavy steel shield, that full plate armor, and dumping your dex in a low point by setting for something like that is actually, and I'm gonna sound like a huge hypocrite here, totally 100% acceptable. With that said, the first two kinds of builds I see looking at this thing are a Magus and a Melee Alchemist. We get a buff to our ability to hurt things, and our ability to be smart at things and make our extracts or cast our spells, which is really sweet. So if I were to play an Aphorite right there, that's what I'm looking at. Buff my strength score, hit somebody in the face with a hammer, or shocking grasp them until they're dead, with, at the end of the day, 20 rounds per day, worth of a 20% mischance. That's a free blur. That's not bad. If I were to GM for an Aphorite, we're probably going to Axis. I'm not going to lie. That's definitely a place that I've never taken a party to because it's never really felt right. But now that we have an outsider race from Axis, at least originally, no time like the present to send an inevitable back to enact the will of Axis and bring a given Aphorite character back to that perfect city to fulfill some perfect task written in some perfect book somewhere. My naturally chaotic good instincts are kind of shying away from this, but that's the idea. A lot of games will follow the themes of destiny, the hero who's been chosen to fulfill a great task, and in Lawful Neutral, that hero chosen to perform a great task probably has an employee ID number, and of course, it's super easy as a GM to make that be a character you're GMing for. But what do you guys think about the Aphorite? Would you play this? I would play this. This isn't bad. Would you use them as NPCs in your world? And have you ever been to Axis as a GM or as a player? And if so, hey, maybe your next game takes place in Axis and maybe you can play it on Fantasy Grounds Ultimate Edition. We're giving that away right here on the channel. Follow this card right up here to be directed to that giveaway. And remember, patronage at Ease here grants you a second entry in all of our giveaways, and we'll get you into some Pathfinder 2nd Edition one-shots over the course of the playtest. So, hey, that's sweet, right? Anyway, that's all we have for today. Again, thank you guys so much for hanging out. Be sure to like and subscribe. The next episode of the Forgotten Race Review, where we cover the race that was reprinted from Distant Shores for Planar Adventures. The Gonzi drops next Monday.